Go. Let's talk about Charlemagne today. Yeah, we do have some more we need to talk about today. Now, Charlemagne is perhaps one of the most well-known and famous of all the kings that lived during the Middle Ages. Depends on your perspective and depends on who you like to talk about or hear about. Or who your teacher is. Very good. So, a couple things I want to talk about with him. Now, it's important to remember that Charlemagne is the son of which person we've already talked about? He was a mayor of the palace. Pepin, which one? We talk about Pepin the Second and Pepin the Short. Pepin the Short. Okay, so Pepin the Short has a son. His name is Charlemagne. So Pepin the Short was appointed king by which person? By the Pope. The Pope made Pepin the Short the king. So he establishes a line of kings after him, and what do we call that line of kings? No, the donation of Pepin was his contribution to the Catholic Church for defeating the Lombards. Carolinian house, okay? So we said that was named after Charlemagne because Charlemagne is the most famous and well-known of all the kings that come through this family line. So as we talk about Charlemagne's character, his name means Charles the Great. So we have to think, okay, we know some greats in history. You might think of one? Alexander is the one that comes to my mind first. Anybody else? Yeah. Well, there was an Ivan the Great too. Okay. Or Ivan the Terrible. So that's the other one I was thinking of. So here we have Charles the Great. That'd be a pretty great name to have after yourself, wouldn't it? Yeah. None of us have made it to that yet. So, a couple things you need to know about him. He was large in his stature. So I kind of think when the Bible talks to us about King Saul, how he just looked like a king, I think a lot of Charlemagne in that way, that the people looked to him and figured, kind of believed that he looked like a king. He was tall, he was strong, he was somebody that they could look up to. Yeah, that was on purpose. And he got his stature not from his dad, Pepin the Short, from his mom. Yeah. Now, I need to warn you. I need to warn you because I know this is just going to set you all off. But his mom's name was Bigfoot Bertha. Bigfoot Bertha. That was her name. Yeah.
Why did they make such names? Why not just call them like beautiful or?
So maybe she wasn't beautiful. I don't know. We don't know a whole lot about her, but she was rather large apparently, and perhaps tall, and that's where Charlemagne gets it from. Now, in his personal life, it consisted of a lot of marriages and a lot of divorce. So the man, while he may have had some success as king, certainly his personal life was in turmoil. When we look at his conquests and some of the things that he is well known for, one of the things that he does as king is that he reconquers the Lombards, similar to what his father had done. But in this case, he goes further and he conquers the Lombards in their own territory, and actually he becomes the king of the Lombards. So where Pepin the Short, he just cast them out, or he drove them out of the area around the Catholic Church and pushed them out of the Roman territory. Charlemagne goes in and he actually conquers the rest of the people and puts them under his kingdom and now becomes their king. And it expands his kingdom even further. So he then used that to help him gain control of most of Western Europe. So he continues conquering these little sections of territory, adding more territory to his kingdom, becoming one of the most powerful kings in all the world at this time. And he is the one responsible for beginning the foundation of modern-day France, Germany, and Italy. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to comprehend how powerful these guys are because we think, well, Middle Ages was dark, it was gloomy, it was like guys riding horses in full armor and swords. They're very primitive, but yet they exercised an incredible amount of power, and these guys were not dumb. These guys had a lot of brilliant military strategy that most of us really wouldn't understand. And we're still trying to figure out exactly how they were able to conquer all these so effectively. Now, keep in mind, it was a time of incredible loss on the battlefield. Many, many people die as a result of each of these battles. And many of these names go down without any sort of acknowledgement in history because there was no record kept of all these men that died in these battles. So he really becomes important to the formation of early Europe. Now, as he continues to gain more and more momentum and more power, we get to the year 800. And it is at this time where Charlemagne is crowned emperor. And there is some debate as far as whether he knew he was going to be crowned or whether this was thrown upon him and he was just kind of like, oh, whoa, me? You're going to honor me? You're going to crown me emperor? Wow, well, sure. Okay, I guess I will. But I don't know how you could not know this was coming. I happen to think he probably knew that the people wanted to crown him emperor. But they crowned him emperor of what they called the restored Roman Empire because he was able to conquer all of the Western Roman Empire and reestablish it as a major power. Haley?
Is this at the same time as Justinian?
It's very close. I'd have to go back and look at our notes on Justinian to find out the exact year, but they are pretty similar. Yeah. So they're not too far off. So he is restoring the western side of the empire. Now, keep in mind, the people are not back to what they had during the Roman Empire. They were not established in commerce and trade. Life was still rough for the common people. But as far as having a king, he was definitely the man for that. And the question then comes into play here, who is more powerful? Is it Charlemagne or is it the Pope? Whose authority is supreme? If you're a common person living in 800 AD in the middle of Frankish territory and the Pope and Charlemagne have a disagreement, whose side are you on? Understanding that both have a different power over you. What is Charlemagne's major power over you? Okay. Okay. But what is your greatest fear of Charlemagne? Why are you loyal to him? He could kill you. Okay. What is your greatest fear of the Pope? Why are you loyal to him?
Whenever you do die, you might not go to heaven.
Okay. He can affect your eternal security.
That's scary.
According to their teaching.
So you're neutral.
So, yeah, you're going to sit in the middle. I'm going to sit on the fence. Not going to take a side. But this is a real debate that people have and a real question in their mind. Okay, what if they disagree? What if they're not on the same page? Who do I follow? Do I follow the Pope?
This is why you make the Pope king.
That
That would not be a good idea, but...
Yeah, you're almost there. We're gonna go that route once. It doesn't turn out well.
Yeah.
So this is where people are wondering, okay, where do I go? Because if I side with the Pope, then the king is going to make my life miserable here on earth, maybe even kill me. If I side with the Pope, or if I side with the king, then I might get thrown out of the church, which means I can't do the sacraments, which means I can't go to heaven. That's bad. This is where people are. And this is a major question and a real hard one for people to answer when it comes to Charlemagne. Now, a couple things that Charlemagne does while he is king is he brings a revival of learning to Western Europe. Charlemagne loved books. He loved and promoted education.
I like this guy.
He believed that in order for his kingdom to be strong, he needed for the people to be able to read, to be able to write, to be able to understand the classics, to be able to understand history, to know science and math. And so he appointed a man by the name of Alcuin to take charge of his educational policies. And I like what Charlemagne does here because he acknowledges the fact that he needs some assistance in governing his empire. And so he brings in an expert. And Alcuin was one of the brightest minds of the day. He knew a lot about education, learning. He had studied a whole lot. And so he brings in Alcuin, and Alcuin decides that he is going to help make the empire more educated and bring back learning. And he goes to the church and he challenges the church to increase learning and literacy within the Catholic Church. Now, if you're the Catholic Church, what's your response to that?
No.
Well, hold on. You're the Catholic Church. How are you going to tell people I don't want you to learn to read and write? Yeah, you can't.
You don't understand God like I do.
Yeah. So the Catholic Church is kind of put in a bad spot from their perspective. Is well, okay. This is really not the way we've done things before. It might mess things up a little bit, but okay, sure. Because of Charlemagne's pressure and Alcuin's pressure on the Catholic Church, they begin to establish learning centers, and they begin to make copies of the Bible within the Catholic Church. Now, it does not mean that, here's the catch, they make copies of the Bible, but it is made in the original language or is made in Latin. So they reproduce copies of the Bible. There are more copies of the Bible that are made here, but you have to know Latin, Greek, or Hebrew in order to be able to read it. Well, what person in Europe knows Latin, Greek, and Hebrew? Okay, the Pope probably does. The regular monks, the guys in the monasteries, they know it. Some of the priests might. Maybe a few of the kings, like Charlemagne, he was pretty well educated. He probably would have understood it. But as far as the common people, had no clue. So, no, it's not helpful yet. But this is getting the rock moving in the right direction. So that now there's more copies of Scripture available, so that as these monks start poring over the original language, they start reading it for themselves, some of them, a.k.a. Martin Luther, are going to read and realize the just shall live by faith, not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his mercy he saved us. And he's going to start processing all of this. And if it were not for Alcuin putting pressure on the Catholic Church to encourage their monks to learn, we may not have had Martin Luther, may not have had the Reformation the way we know it today. So, as we finish here today,